Hey Riverside, Zach here. We've reached week 8 of our Gospel Fluency Handbook overview. So it was an 8-week study. This is the 8th video, so we've kind of arrived here at the end, which is a little bit bittersweet. But man, it's been a blast just to be able to share some of these things with you that have had just a dramatic impact on my life and the life of our small group. I really hope that you, after watching all of these videos, have a little bit more of a deep understanding of the gospel and how it impacts the everyday stuff of life, and just how it begins to transform and shape and change our hearts just on a daily basis. If you got some of those tools you can stash away and use, I am so grateful that the Lord used this to shape your heart and to continue changing you as a believer. Last week, we talked about how we need to be living our lives as gospel metaphors. We need to be living our lives in a way that the people around us, when they see the way that we're acting and living, that demands an explanation. That there's like no way that the way that we're behaving is normal. That they're like, why are you doing the things that you're doing? And obviously, we need to give the answer. Jesus is the reason, right? Jesus is the reason that I'm behaving the way that I'm behaving. Jesus is the reason that I am living my life with such love. But so often we live our lives and do these good things for people, and people are asking us why are you doing these things? And we don't give them a reason. I wanted to read you guys an excerpt from this last chapter in the book, because I was reading through, I was like, there's no way I can say this as good as Jeff says this, so bear with me, it's not too long. This is in the last chapter of the Gospel Fluency Handbook. Jeff says this, he says, "I've found that when we live our lives intentionally as display people, we get plenty of opportunities to talk about why we do it." Just want to stop there real quick. That is so true. Like, when you start living your life with this gospel intentionality, when you're viewing every interaction that you have as an opportunity to be sharing Jesus with them, to be showing them who Christ is and what he's done for you, man, things open up like crazy. I used to think to myself, like, how am I ever going to find people to share the gospel with? What, do I just go to a random coffee shop and like just walk up to someone? Like, but when you start to live your life in this way, it's almost overwhelming how many opportunities present themselves. So man, I totally agree with that. Anyway, he continues. "Lives full of grace and love, schedules rearranged to make space to listen to and serve, budgets adjusted to feed and care for people, or words spoken to protect and build up, all demand explanations. These things really don't make sense apart from the gospel. Yet in our explanation to others, we often forget to give them Jesus. Paul says to the church in Rome, 'How then will they call on him whom they have not believed? And how are they to believe in him whom they have never heard? And how are they to hear without someone preaching? And how are they to preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who preach the good news.'" That is from Romans 10:14-15. "The feet that run to carry our hands and faces that display the gospel must also bring along mouths ready to declare the gospel. When we live Jesus-like lives but don't share the reason we rob Jesus of his glory." I think that was a weighty statement, that when we're living these lives like Jesus, but we're not sharing with our mouths, we are robbing Jesus of the glory. He deserves the credit for what we do, not us. And I understand that we often experience fear or insecurity when opportunities like this come up. I know it's not easy for many of us to share Jesus with others. This reminded me of and man, I wish I knew what book I read this in, because this analogy has stuck with me for years and years and years. I'll find it someday. But it's this analogy where if we're doing these good things, we're living these Christ-like lives, and then we're not sharing Jesus, it is a serious issue if we're having these deeds but we don't have the words to back them up. The analogy is that it's like a signpost. I kind of like to say it's like a flashy signpost that everyone can see. So we're doing these crazy things, we're living our life in this such countercultural way that everyone's looking up at us and like, whoa, what's going on there? And we're like a signpost. But if we're not pointing people to Jesus, we are pointing people to the wrong thing. If we are not declaring, I'm doing these things because of Jesus, but we're doing we're doing more harm than good. We're doing more harm than good if we're doing good things but not actually verbally pointing people to Jesus. We are pointing people to other things, or maybe even worse, we're pointing people to ourselves. We're saying, look at me. I'm awesome. I'm doing these amazing things. I'm such a loving guy. It's very confusing, and it's not the full picture if we are not proclaiming these things, not only through our deeds, but also through our words. I wanted to read you an excerpt from 1 Peter 3, verse 15. 1 Peter 3:15. But in your hearts honor Christ, the Lord is holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for the reason for the hope that is in you. Yet, do it with gentleness and respect. So I think there are two main teachings in that short passage. The first one being, listen, when you're living this way, when you're living your life in a Christ-like manner, people are going to be asking. People are going to be wondering, why are you living this way? What is that hope that's within you? That's different than the rest of the world. But then when you share the gospel with people, when you tell them the reason for that hope within, don't do it in a brash way. It says do it in gentleness and respect. Do it like, I'm not a parent, so like every time I hold a friend's newborn baby, I'm just like, this is the most precious bundle. It's like, I don't want to do anything to hurt this precious baby who's just starting life. That's how we need to treat people when we're sharing the gospel with them. We need to treat them in a way that we are showing them gentleness and respect. It's so important. And this kind of roughhousing that we can do with our toddlers, that happens more down the line, right? You could be a little bit rougher with someone who's matured a little bit more, but these people who haven't even yet believed, we need to treat them with gentleness and respect, and also love. Man, if your motive for not sharing, for sharing the gospel with people isn't love, you really need to check yourself. We need to be sharing with a root heart of love when we're sharing the gospel with people. You might be saying to yourself, man, Zach, I don't even know where to start with this. Like, what on earth would I even say to someone? How am I going to share the gospel with someone? It's such a daunting task. I would just say to you, if that's how you feel, you need to understand, you need to ask God for help with that. You need to realize that the purpose that He put you on earth, the purpose you have as a Christian, the job that you've been commissioned to accomplish on this earth is spreading His gospel. And He's going to equip you for that job. So you need to ask Him. Ask Him for the tools. Ask Him for wisdom. Ask Him for the words to say. Ask Him for the boldness you need to proclaim His gospel. And He will give it to you. This is what He wants. There's no question that this is what He wants. So we know that when we pray these things, He is going to give you what you need to share His word. So you might be thinking, all right, here we go. Zach's come to the end here. I know as a teacher, when the clock starts getting to the end and the kids start looking up the clock, they're like, oh, yeah, class is about over. Class is dismissed. That's not the case here, guys. This is not the end of the gospel fluency journey. This is literally like class is just getting started. This is where things are beginning. Just like language, right? You might have been sitting in the classroom for a little bit, but now you got to go out and practice this language, right? You have to practice to get that fluency. So guys, I urge you to take some of these tools that we've been going through and try to practice these things. Practice these things outside with real people in real situations. But just a little caveat on that. Don't go out and start practicing these things on others if you haven't yet practiced this with yourself. If you aren't yet believing in the love of God, the power of the gospel, if that isn't starting to change your heart, then you have no business going out and telling other people that it's going to do that for them, right? Because the reality is, you have to start with you first. You have to believe first. Remember, we talked about a few weeks ago that you talk about what you love. And we love things that work. So you're going to talk about things that are working. If the gospel is really changing your heart, if this gospel message is actually working, you're seeing a dramatic change in your life because of what Christ did, because you believe in him, you are not going to be able to help yourself but talk about it. It's going to be so exciting, so life-changing. There's no way you can avoid talking about it. It's inevitable. So if you're not to that place yet, just pray, confess, believe. The gospel will change your heart. You can be assured of that. You will be sharing the gospel with people. This is his purpose for you. This is in God's plan for you. And don't forget that we have a whole world around us full of people who are in desperate need of this message, of this gospel message. People need to hear about Jesus. People are, if they don't hear about Jesus, they are going to live a life apart from him. We don't want that. If you love people, I know you don't want that. So start the trajectory. Start practicing sharing the gospel with people, living out these gospel truths as he changes your heart, as the gospel is transforming everything about your life. Proclaim it. Proclaim it with your mouth. Proclaim it with what you do. And man, that is a life well lived. That is a life full of purpose. Every day, no matter what your job is, no matter what your situation is, you are going to wake up with a purpose, with a goal. And I love that. I love that for my life. The world needs you to share this gospel message. The world needs you, and God is using you. God is using you as a conduit of his love. God chose to use his people as his way of expressing his gospel message, his gospel truths, his love to the world. So don't take that job lightly. That is our job, and we have this. We're so fortunate to have this purpose, right? Guys, thank you for joining me on this this rambly journey. I really appreciate you just lending your ear to me. If you have any questions about any of this, or you want more resources, please reach out. ZacharySwanson@me.com is my email. I'd love to connect with you, talk about strategies, anything like that. I love you guys. Hope to see you soon.